Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, today we're doing the Leveraging LinkedIn webinar. We have Nava Fuchs on the call today. She's going to be a presenter. She's the founder of AngelEd, which makes education accessible for everyone. And she's really presenting to us as someone that has kind of made things happen in the networking world for herself. She's graduated in 2010, and in a very short time she just really disrupted the traditional way that someone would go about getting a job, forming their own business, and pretty much networking online. So without any further ado, here's Nava.
Thank you, Steve. Hi, everyone. I am going to be talking about LinkedIn, but I'm also going to be talking about just general good practices of how you present yourself. I know there was a lot of feedback leading up to this that we wanted to touch on resume building and cover letters. Depending on how this goes, this may turn into more of a discussion than it is a presentation, but I want to make this work for everyone, so I'm going to give you all the heads up. I have my phone right next to me. If you have any questions, please text them to 561-703-6511. Again, 561-703-6511. There will be a section for questions after each topic. The topics are going to be building your LinkedIn profile, navigating groups, and how and what to share on LinkedIn. So with that in mind, if you have any questions from the beginning, feel free to send them to me and we can maybe address them ahead. Otherwise, we'll dive right in. So just bear that in mind. And if you are not able to text me your questions, my contact info will be there at the end. You can feel free to send them to me. So we're going to dive right in. We will when PowerPoint is up. So LinkedIn profiles can be defined much like spaghetti westerns, the good, the bad, and the ugly. A good LinkedIn profile is going to have a very good summary that will be data-driven, i.e., a good one is I increased market share by 21%. I closed 250 deals. A bad one is expected to close deals or close deals, i.e. a job description. A picture that you use, and we'll go through examples, should absolutely convey your personality, but should be professional. So it should be a picture that they can see who you are. It's not like it's off in the distance. It's not foggy. It has some of your personality, but that it's professional. The experience that you share, you're going to have different ways of sharing that, and we'll go through that. But it should tell a story, and again, be data-driven. And there's one piece that not every profile needs to have, but you have it if it's relevant, which is causes and projects. And I call it star power with a personal touch. And so the causes that you share, so like for example with me, AngelEd, we helped people with financing their education, but then also cultivating mentors. So the causes that I have on my profile, and we'll go through it, is education oriented. It has to do with housing, it has to do with children. So it's very pertinent to the story of me, and it helps me sell myself as an entity and as an asset to prospective employers, to prospective clients, to prospective partners. A bad profile is going to be there's no summary, or it's so long that you're not going to read it. So I don't know about you, but sometimes I will find an article that is amazing for the first 5 seconds, and then it just goes on and on and on. It's made its point, but there's just more data and more reasoning, and it's like, what are we doing? So don't write too much, and don't write nothing at all. For pictures, your Facebook profile picture is likely not the profile picture you want to use for LinkedIn. While they should talk to one another, so the brand that you have online should always be consistent, it should be a picture that conveys who you are without compromising who you are. So actually, my legal counsel gave me a really great example that I share with everyone. And basically the thought is this: if you don't want the Boston Herald or whatever newspaper is local to you having your picture and some compromising bit of info on the front page, don't put it on your LinkedIn profile. Because your LinkedIn profile is your means, as I've said, by which you sell yourself. And an ugly profile is that line in between bad and good. It might be a run-of-the-mill profile picture or summary of experiences, but there's nothing showing the star power of you. There's nothing that says Nava Fuchs is special. So when someone is looking at your profile to potentially give you a job, it's like you're a B student, and a B student doesn't get A paychecks, and so it's like it's hard to make the case that you're worth paying attention to. For experience, that you list every single thing you've ever done, and there's no coherent story. So I have a very good friend who she gave me permission to show this to you, who she lists every company without giving context as to why it's actually pertinent to her, to whatever employment she wants to pursue. And it includes things like being a waiter without giving the kind of PR spin that says maybe you're good at customer relations. So with that, we're actually going to step out of PowerPoint mode and into LinkedIn mode. You can see this is our LinkedIn homepage. And we're going to first look at my profile. So as you can see, this is a profile of me. It shows off my coy, playful perspective on business. This is a picture that replaced another one which shall not be shown because it was compromising and it was a bad picture. I self-proclaim it. You can see my title. Very clearly, my most immediate task that I'm doing that people should think about me is up at the forefront. In Angel Ed, there's no real differentiating titles within our company. We're all essentially co-founders and founders. So that's why it doesn't say CEO at Angel Ed or president at Angel Ed. It just says founder. You then will see I put my most recent activity. So you can see I'm recommending people, and that's actually the lawyer I was just telling you about. We then go to my summary. This summary succinctly says who I am. It conveys my voice, which is consistent with all means by which I share information. But it also gives you two ways to think about me. Do you think about me as the biz dev social media consultant? Do you think about me as the head, quote unquote, because we're all technically co-founders, of Angel Ed? If you think about me for Angel Ed, here's the one means of contact info. If you think about me for biz dev, here's the other. And then you have my specialties. And this actually, it dates me as being an early LinkedIn user that is spelled out like this. If you were to go on and sign on for LinkedIn just right off the cuff right now, you actually wouldn't have this because it's been turned into the skills and expertise section. So the skills and expertise, this is a new way by which LinkedIn actually encourages you to get recommendations without forcing the people that you want to recommend you to spend the time on writing a lengthy recommendation, although I cannot recommend getting recommendations enough. Give them out, ask for them. It's the best way to cement the relationships that you make online and off. So you can see this is what I'm known for. This is what people endorse me for. Then we go to my volunteer experience and causes. And there's a very good reason why my volunteer experiences and causes comes before my experience. I want people, as the brand of Nava, thinking about me as an altruistic person who's good at business, but I put ethics first. So that's why these come first. Then you got into my experience. And as you can see, my experience, say if we look at my Director of Data Development, I have quantifiable things I've achieved. So rather than just Director of Data Development and there's nothing there, or Director of Data Development and there's a book, you have highlights of my time there that were exceptional. And then you can see my recommendations, and so that's that. Now we're going to go and look at a bad profile, although you are allowed to think that my profile is bad. It's perfectly okay. Where is she? I'll do it this way. Sometimes LinkedIn has gone through many incarnations of how it stores information. All right, I guess we're not going to show her. We will then show Zareta. So here's an example of a profile that I would not recommend putting together. Zareta Adams is actually a very experienced thespian and teacher. She's been teaching for over 40 years, but you would never know that. All you see here is 2 positions, and it doesn't encompass all of her experience. There's no recommendations, and you have very little context as to who she is. Now, for some people, that's okay, because, say, for example, you're Michael Scott, who's one of the VCs at Northbridge, or even Frank Britt, who's the CEO of Penn Foster, this lovely institution that is providing you such a wonderful education. They actually have really in-depth LinkedIn profiles, but because they're well-known and because their expertise is essentially kind of taken for granted, they're allowed to get away with maybe not as robust of a profile, or maybe they actually don't have a robust profile because they don't want very many people interacting with it. But in your case, where you actually want employment and you're looking for a means by which to translate the experiences that you've had here into a career, you have to be able to spell out what you do, why you do what you do, why you're the best ever at it, and have a cohesive story that is not just your experiences, but your personality. So with that, I will leave it open to 3 questions.
All right, Nava, we did get a question typed in by Marta. She asked, she asked actually, she's interested in learning how private or public LinkedIn and a profile can be. Would you be able to talk a little bit about privacy settings?
Sure. So there are several different versions of LinkedIn that have actually evolved as LinkedIn has become the rock star at monetization that it is. A free profile has very little that it can do for privacy, with the caveat that you can make certain pieces of what you do private. So like if we go to settings, all right. As you can see, here are the privacy controls. So you can select who can see your activity feed. The activity feed is what you're sharing and what you're doing on LinkedIn. So say you like a comment in a group or you post something, but you don't necessarily want that being shown. That's that piece. This is the thing that when you're job hunting and that you're in that realm of who's actually checking me out, the change your profile and photo visibility, as well as just who's viewing your profile. I personally like having everyone being able to see who I am, what I do, because the things that I share are very tailored. There's strategy behind what I put on LinkedIn, so I want everyone seeing it. But if you're sharing something that you only want to go to a certain group, it is possible to just share to connect certain connections or to mail to people. But like if you put something up on the internet, it's essentially fair game for anyone to really get at. The internet is not inherently a privacy thing. But when it comes to public profiles before you've connected with someone, when you get paid accounts on LinkedIn, which I actually don't advise as a job seeker, the people that are looking to hire people, that's why there are paid accounts, but as a job seeker, you actually don't necessarily need a paid account. But for example, we'll do so Art Pappas is actually someone that I know. However, because we're a second connection on LinkedIn, sometimes I see his full profile, other times I don't. And we can actually just look at a random person that I don't know, and maybe it'll prove the point that I want to make. One that would, I feel like we all know who Mark Zuckerberg is, right? All right, so Mark Zuckerberg is a good example of a profile that I actually don't very much like, but likely this is one profile that's either not actually Mark or he specifically made it just to kind of like collect trash. But the privacy issue in a nutshell is you can tailor what you send out, but if you don't want it available, don't put it on LinkedIn or Facebook or anything. Like, you should not be sharing things that you don't want out there. Does that answer the question?
I would say so, and I text messaged her back and answered too, so I would say you definitely covered it. Let's move on to just another quick question, and it is asking, how do you know when you have a good or bad profile?
So I will show you right now. So I'm going to go to my home page, and I'm going to look at this. So who's viewed my profile? So there's two ways you know that you have a good profile. The first is how often are people putting it up, or how often is LinkedIn making you come up? So if you have a really robust profile with a lot of things filled out, LinkedIn wants to show you off, a lot like how Google likes to show off ads that work really well. So I can see all these people are checking out my profile. I'm assuming a lot of them are you. So that would explain my spike in activity. The other way you can tell is actually LinkedIn does this fantastic thing, which was really clever marketing on their part, is it will tell you how strong of a profile you have. So my profile strength is all-star because I've filled out everything. I keep it very up-to-date. I'm constantly sharing. I'm constantly using LinkedIn tools. So LinkedIn rewards me with an all-star profile. I answered the question.
All right. There are a bunch of
questions. I'm not seeing any other questions.
Nava,
Sorry, what?
there's a bunch of questions in the queue. With me logged in as Kate, I could see them. If you only want to go through three and keep moving, I could answer back and just let people know the answer to their question, and I could just keep you moving, and when you break, we could ask questions if that
I
works for
think
you.
I think what we should do is we'll move on, but all questions I think we'll answer in a blog post.
Sure.
And so we'll address it that way. So we'll
Sure.
keep moving.
Sounds good.
Okay, so let's go to the next little bit. So, all right, LinkedIn groups. We spent a lot of time on the profile, so we're going to kind of spend a little less time on the actual interactive groups and more just sum up what you can do with them. So there's essentially 5 group types: location, industry, function, energy, and school. Location is fairly straightforward. It's like linked local Boston, Boston professional networking group. There's Go Small Business Boston. Anything that has to do with Boston or Phoenix or Chicago or New York or wherever city, it will have local news. It will have people probably posting jobs, actively looking in that city. It will have people that maybe are more likely to meet with you for coffee because they're in your area. So the conversations and the mentorship and the partnerships and the sales are much more likely. So that's the local. Industry is something like AMA, or it's something like the CAD group, or it's something like SEO, and just different things that have to do with your industry. So the reason why you go into these types of groups is because you want to know what are the experts in those groups thinking, what are they sharing. This is an amazing place, by the way, as you see articles that matter to you, or if you are writing blog posts, to share your industry news, because this is one of the best ways to become a thought leader, i.e. you put something out there, a lot of people share it. And that's essentially the goal of the LinkedIn groups, is to be the thought leader by which you are the beating pulse behind the conversation. And again, I cannot stress industry. If you really need an in at a company, and you maybe you're not going to want to look for the hiring manager. You're going to want to look for the VP of something, or the head of a department, or whatever it might be, and ask them for an informational interview on what their world is like. Because at the end of the day, most hiring folks don't actually know the ins and outs of the job. But if you make good with the person above them, because 9 times out of 10, the hiring manager actually isn't the one that makes the final say. They just sign the paperwork. If you can make friends with the head of a department that you'll actually be working in, you'll likely get the position. So then there's function groups. Function groups are my favorite way of groups that they're just marketing. So I put the Learn Launch group as my example. There's hundreds of others where essentially an event wants to be able to control the conversation of its participants. So for example, this webinar, we might, after this webinar, create a group specifically for the participants of this webinar, where we can ask questions, share comments, people can show off what they've learned, like showing their profile, showing their resumes and all these things, and getting critiques and feedback. So that's function. You might also see function groups where they are geared specifically towards students, and that's different than schools, and I'll explain when I get to schools, but where it's inclined to get students interacting with professionals, which is a really meaningful exchange. And you need to milk your student status for as long as you can, because when you're a student, you're not a threat, and people are much more likely to actually give you the time of day. So my favorite story about how I made the head of marketing for Sony USA as part of my network is when I was in college, I was given the task of doing an informational interview with someone whom is doing the work that I want to do. And I'm a gamer, so I was like, I'm going to go find someone in PR for gaming. And I found then head of PR for Atari, Aram Tabari. We had a great conversation. He gave me a lot of info, and he said to keep in touch. He's now the head of marketing for Sony US. So it's like that's a really meaningful way for you to start building your Rolodex. And even if they're not going to give you a job now, when you're the head of a department or you're looking to start a company, or even if you're in your work but you want to kind of excel beyond just the parameters of your job, you'll be able to kind of rope in and pull in these contacts that are so above necessarily where you should be in terms of your connections that you'll blow your managers, you'll blow your bosses just out of the water with how awesome you are and what kind of value you add. So it's reaffirming the hire when you can build the book of business for the business that's hiring you. So the energy level of a group, and by the way, if there are questions on that point, like I'm likely not going to have time to go into it in detail now because we're already halfway through, but I'm absolutely going to address it in the blog post that we just discussed that we do. So send the questions, but I'm not promising to address it fully in the next 30 minutes, although we can try. For energy level of the group, this is pretty much just the mechanics and the interaction and the chemistry of a group. So there are some groups out there, and I feel really sorry for them when this happens, where there's one person that dominates the conversation and there's no one else interacting. There's other groups where there's maybe 5 people interacting, but they're the only 5. A really healthy group has somewhere between 500 and 2,000 people in it. There's a kind of a cycle of who's interacting, who's sharing, who's commenting. You don't necessarily want to see a group full of links, but you also don't necessarily want to see a group that's just waning philosophical, because when a group is just waning philosophical, 9 times out of 10, they do not want to be sold. And when you're looking for a job or when you're looking to post a job, those are not the groups to do it. So you want to kind of see what value you'll add to the group by contributing and what value the group will add to you as a consumer of their content. So look at a group. I know a lot of groups that are worthwhile are member-only groups. Do a site search on a group that you're genuinely curious on, and I can show you how to do a site search in a second. But yeah, just check the energy level and make sure it's a good fit. And then finally, school. So each one of you should, right now, while we're talking, go sign up for the Penn Foster Students and Alum Group. You cannot, there's no value, or price rather, that can be placed on the value of being part of your school's student group. This is where you find connections, jobs, advice. Like I saw this morning, and it was heartwarming. It's like there were maybe 20 students all kind of bonding over the fact that they had just finished this one program. That was a medical-oriented program. And like they were all commemorating over it. And so say you have something truly valuable to add, like maybe you're an employer and you're looking to go hire these people. Or maybe an employer sees that and is like, all right, well guys, I'm going to go offer you all internships because you clearly are getting this experience. The people that are part of that group all share one thing really important in common. They all went through at least one experience that they can relate to, their Penn Foster experience. So definitely, definitely join any Penn Foster group that is pertinent to your major, that is pertinent to you in general. So yeah, we are going to show you a site search. Group. So site search is simply typing site, semicolon, www.linkedin.com, and then you might do CAD. So look what I've just found. I've just found CAD jobs, CAD specialist profiles, CAD groups, just by doing that one simple little search. So I've saved myself the time of kind of weeding through all these different groups, doing the searches, and likely also have bypassed the member-only kind of gatekeeper because you usually can't access group conversations if it's a closed group until you're a member. And you might not be approved right away. So you usually want to see if this is actually a group that you want to be invested in. So I will show you a quick example of group interaction, and then we'll move on to questions. So we're going to actually look at my group, the Angel Ed group. So this group is probably the best example of why I love LinkedIn. Like, I love it very, very much, because all of the people in this group I didn't know until I made them a connection on LinkedIn. Actually, with the exception of Lisa Albert. Lisa Albert was an intern of mine. She now is doing very well in her advertising career. So LinkedIn groups function off of top influencers. This is my group, and I formed it relatively recently, so I'm still the dominant thought leader. Chad O'Connor is someone that I met through actually the Emerson student group. And the things that we're sharing all have to do with the topic of Angel Ed, i.e. student debt, mentorship, navigating college life, and making good decisions. So you can see the thing that Chad shared, this was actually an article. It's a link. If I click on it, it takes me away from the group to an article. And that's okay in my group because I like people sharing. Some groups frown on that. Global Gurus is one of them. I like Global Gurus for cultivating mentors and cultivating contacts, not necessarily for plugging the project that you work on. But then you can look at this, like I just posted this comment. Is lowering the interest rate on debt a good idea? Like just asking the group a question. And so I got some responses. And by creating that conversation, you then are showing yourself off as a thought leader that can generate meaningful responses out of meaningful people, as well as gaining intel that's otherwise harder to gain. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions.
All right, there are a few for you. Let's tackle a quick one first. It is from Lewis. He's asking if you could just redefine informational interview for him, please.
Oh, sure. Okay, so informational interview is the idea that you as a student are asking a working professional who's doing the job that you're going to school for or that you're pursuing, what that job looks like. So asking them what their day looks like, are they happy, what is really involved in doing the day, what is involved in doing that job, what do you need to do to make that job happen. I mean, at Angel Ed, we actually connect people to mentorship and internship opportunities, but sometimes you may not have those opportunities available. So LinkedIn is a very good source of gaining those informational interviews, and I'd actually suggest just posting it out there on groups that are the industry groups. I'm looking to do an informational interview. Would anyone here be willing to answer a few questions for me? And it's just as simple as that.
All right, next question. Britton asks, what if we don't have all the experience and things that others might have? Is there anything that they can do?
Yes, 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 yes. So as a background on me, I'm an English major that went into marketing and PR. When I started my biz dev career as an intern, I had very little experience in business development, in internet marketing, in all of these things. But what I did do is, and I have a Hermione complex, so like I love learning from people and listening to people. So I'd ask questions. So that for people that have very little experience, the informational interview is a must. Joining groups like Global Gurus and just asking questions and letting people respond is amazing. Requesting copies from people that really do give you good responses. Like, for example, Dick Bonnet. Dick Bonnet, I used to think he hated me because, like, he'd make a point of every time I posted something on LinkedIn, he would have something atrociously mean to say about it. When in fact, he was just really engaged by the perspective that I brought, and he made a point to always comment on my things. So he ended up actually, I turned him into a mentor for the Angel Ed program because I called him up and was saying, let's have a conversation about student debt and mentorship. And he's like, let's do it. So experience is something you're going to gain professionally over time. But the general concept of cultivating mentors, of asking questions, of respecting someone's expertise and experience and leveraging that so that they not only help you information-wise, but like you and will open doors for you. I mean, that's what this webinar is all about, is understanding how to pick the right people to open those doors.
Hey, great. Another question is, Terry's asking, she only has one photo, and it's when she graduated with her child. Could you talk a little bit about photos for a minute?
So I actually, it depends on the brand that, Carrie, you want to put forward. Like, I'm actually going to pull up Tim Tracy's profile. Tim is a really lovable guy. He used to be a professor at BU. He also used to manage soccer teams. Now he's the social media manager for Halo. His profile picture is not terribly professional. It shows his personality, but it works for him because it's the story he wants to tell. But he's a down-to-earth, accessible guy. There's another picture I'll actually show you of our developer who he laughs and wants me to redo his profile picture. Like, this is not a terribly great profile picture, but it's okay because it shows off who he is. It shows off, I am Evan Dietz, I am a rock star coder, and I don't really care what I look like. I care about being awesome and doing good work. So for the perspective of carry your child and showing off that you achieved graduating with your child, and if I'm understanding it correctly, that's actually totally fine. You may want, for certain branding choices, to do just you as a headshot, but it's really up to you. What is the image you want potential employers to get at? Do they want, are you a family person who puts your family first? That's probably important to know if you're going to be going into the working world. Like, I'm actually seeing a picture right now that I actually don't like very much, which is this one. Michelle Finlay. I don't like it because it says Facebook picture to me. Like, it's a little bit too casual, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely does. Would you be able to talk about endorsing for a minute?
Yes, endorsements. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my profile for a second. New profile. We're going to look at endorsements. So these endorsements appear on my page because when people landed either on my page or were on other pages and were already endorsing, these things came up for me for people to endorse. So say I go to Kelly Banesh's page. She's a very good friend of mine and does a lot of work in SEO. I've actually already endorsed her for all that I can endorse her for. So now I have 4 people before me that could be endorsed. Do I think that Paul Cornicini knows about entrepreneurship? Absolutely I do. I know that he's run 2 successful businesses. Does John Barry know about Series 7? He should. He's one of the VPs at JP Morgan. What? Oh. So does Vivian Mirto know about executive management? He does. He's not only running his own company, he's actually doing a VC. He's running his own VC. And does Jody Paz know about property? Yes, he does. He is he owns his own real estate company. So I choose to endorse all 4. Now they'll receive an alert from me that I've endorsed them. So it lets them know that I think positively of them and that they can potentially endorse me back, thereby creating a virtuous cycle of camaraderie, endorsements, and branding coming from the brand of Nava or coming from the brand of Vivian or whatever it might be. And they'll also have the choice to add it to their profile. So it's basically a means by which it's easier to recommend someone without writing out a lengthy one of, I'll pull it up for you, these. So these people all endorsed Kelly, or rather recommended Kelly, but maybe you don't have the time to do that. So it's an easier ask of someone to get an endorsement.
Hey, great. Do you have time for one more question?
I believe we do.
Okay. This one comes from Grace. She asks, what if someone is about to change to a different career that she doesn't have experience in? How would you go about it?
I love that question because it's actually one I'm going to show off my dad. So this is my dad. Say hello to Abraham Fuchs. Now, before being a real estate person, he ran his own jewelry business and was also one of the VPs in a family jewelry business. But he decided he was done with it, and so switched into first selling insurance. And you can see he has some experience there. But then he really got into real estate. He loved it. The story that he tells, and I don't approve of the lack of information, but he at least is telling a cohesive story that shows I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. Now, say you're switching careers, but you have yet to actually work in the field you're switching to. What you can do is in your summary, which I will pull up. We'll do, I don't know. We'll pull up me, why not? So you may put, instead of I'm an eccentric business development gal, you might put I'm a seasoned X with a growing interest in Y field, and am on a new adventure, or something like that. At least letting people know that you're not completely inexperienced, because some of your old experiences are going to carry over, but you are doing something new. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would say so. Would you be able to tell us how formal should the language be in their profile on LinkedIn?
This goes back to the branding issue. So I am a coy, playful business development-minded person. So the things that I put on LinkedIn are very conversational in tone. If you were to look at my business partner, David Hopkins, I can't stand his language, but it's his voice. So if you look at what he put, you have, I'm an innovative artist who enjoys coming up with new ways, which, by the way, grammatical errors are bad. Don't have grammar errors. To make exciting and meaningful contributions to society. So he's saying, he's very short about himself, and he's basically saying, let my experience do the talking. So you want to convey in everything that you share, and we'll get to sharing in a second, in every conversation you post on groups, that same tone. That if you are an authority in, I don't know, customer relations, and that your whole thing is that you can maintain a zen, the things that you post should have a very peaceful, non-confrontational voice to them. Whereas if you're like me and you're very much enjoy conversation, you're very lively, you maybe aren't afraid of someone saying, no, that's wrong. I tend to not filter as much of my opinions, but I still keep things very professional, and I'll actually throw in a lot of big words. Like, I tend to carry off big words very, very well. Some people, that's not true at all. So you have to find the voice that works for you and stick with it. So sharing. We're going to just jump right into sharing because that was a good lead-in.
Okay.
So any other questions? Again, we're going to do a blog post right after. So sharing. We'll go back to actually the home page because this is where you're going to see everything that's shared. So LinkedIn actually does a really good job of aggregating things that people share, and they'll usually share things or show things to you that are pertinent to what you've already shown interest in. So for example, class of 2015, career will choose you. It knows that I show a lot of interest in education, that I show a lot of interest in career cultivation. So this is an article that came up for me. It also, this is graduation time for a lot of people, so there's a lot of graduation articles. Now, as we scroll down, you'll see, for example, Hoslin Manya. Hoslin Manya is one of the most avid contributors, and if you guys can connect with Hoslin and find something meaningful way to say hello, do it. He is a powerhouse, especially on Twitter. So where I can talk about LinkedIn, he is someone to talk to about Twitter. He's sharing 20 minutes of startup honesty from someone, aka Matt Lonsu, who helped raise $52 million. So he's very concisely in his voice. He has a very concise, fun but concise voice, and his branding thing is his glasses. And you can, when you have your conversation with him, you'll talk about that. I'll pull up his picture so you all can see. This is the Hoslin glasses. There we go. Sorry. And we can actually just look at the things that he shares. So these things all pertain to him and his brand. Now, his brand is Boston Tweet Up. Boston Tweet Up aggregates the events that happen in Boston, as well as giving you an idea of what's meaningful. So his brand is, I know what's going on, I'm an expert, I'm also a very chill guy. Other people's brands, like Kelly Benesh, I was telling you about, her brand is down-to-earth Southern Belle who knows a lot more than anyone should about SEO. And she's also carries off sweet very well. Other people, like I was telling you about Dick Bonnet. Dick Bonnet is a great guy, but he loves being a jerk online. He revels in making people feel uncomfortable and taking the devil's advocate stance, even if he actually agrees with you. So the things that he shares tend to be very confrontational and controversial. So the one thing we've not done yet, and we're going to wrap up relatively soon, but we want to leave some time for questions, is actually go to Facebook. and see what's good to share and what's not good to share. So we're going to log out of who's here. This is not mine. This is a privacy issue. I'm not, I clicked on mine. I'm blanking when I changed my Facebook profile to. That's nice. It's that embarrassing moment when it's 6:30 and your brain is fried. All right, so see how on Facebook we have things like apps that we're sharing. We use pictures of puppies. We have steroids. This is not okay for LinkedIn. So when you're thinking about what to share and what not to share, we're actually going to go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. Industry articles, ethical issues of the business spin, and updates on your career. Anything else, we don't want to know. I promise you. It's just, you don't want it on LinkedIn. Because the moment it's on LinkedIn, your potential employer will hold it against you and will probably fire you over it. Because you are compromising their brand and their brand integrity. And again, the compromising pictures, this goes back to what pictures are okay for profile pictures. But, I mean, it's common sense too. It's like the question about privacy. If you genuinely do not want anyone else seeing it, why are you posting it online, much less why are you posting it on LinkedIn? So we're going to open up the question.
Okay, Jenna asked, how is LinkedIn used by employers?
So LinkedIn is used by employers in 3 really dubious ways. The first is to make sure that their employees are being really good brand ambassadors and spreading the word. While not every company will have a policy, in fact, sometimes it's illegal for them to have this kind of policy depending on what they're asking, but they'll request that their employees push out messages that have to do with their brand. Like Kelly Benesh, you'll see a lot of things from Search Influence from her. That's because she is obligated to keep pushing out Search Influence materials. The second way is to keep tabs on what you're up to, like for good and for bad. Like if they see that you are a thought leader and are bringing in business and you're sharing conversations in a really meaningful way and putting your company in a really good light, that's data that you can then take to get a raise potentially or to advance. Likewise, things that you're sharing that are maybe negative, they can then say, well, that's not really within company line. No, you don't do that, A, on company time, and B, you don't associate our company with it. And then finally, they'll also do that just to see, are you someone worth hiring? Which is a fairly straightforward one, which is why I saved it for last. They'll look at your experience. They'll see how consistent is your story. So the things that you submit on your resume and your cover letter, to be frank, your resume is actually usually read by a computer that looks at keywords and will sort and see, is this actually someone good for the position depending on what kind of job you're going into. It's your LinkedIn, your Facebook, any online presence that you have that is the true vetting, and the consistency in your voice and in the data is absolutely crucial. If you lie publicly online, it's just bad. Don't do it. Don't embellish on things that you don't need to embellish on. It's better to be straightforward and honest than to fib and fudge and then be caught.
All right, we got 2 questions that are very similar. One is, being in the high school course at the moment, would you recommend I sign up for this before I start my vet assistant course? And then Britton asked a very, very, very similar question. He's a first-time college student in his first semester. He doesn't have a LinkedIn profile yet. Is it something he should get involved with, or should he wait?
Yes, yes, yes. Yes. So I cannot stress how much having LinkedIn early in my professional and even academic career made my life easier, transitioning from student who, and actually I take it back, there's one area where you can fib, your age. That is how you bypass all of the misconceptions about ill experience. So this is a story of how a 17-year-old girl was able to land fashion freelance jobs because people assumed I was 26, and I let them keep on assuming it because I carried myself well. So when you're in high school, or if you're first going to college, or you're still in the beginning of your academic career is meant to inform the who you are, what you want, and why you want it. Your LinkedIn is the data that you can show off to people that's saying you're executing on what you want. So get the data going early, share early. You don't have to have every experience under the sun when you're first starting out. Like, no one's expecting it of you. But to learn, have the access to mentors early, you do it because it's free. Like, why would you turn away free knowledge?
No, you wouldn't. That's a great answer. All right. Betty is asking, where are the instructions for constructing a profile, and how can you go about inserting a picture?
All right, we're going to, and I'm actually going to make a blog post that we'll share with Ken Foster later tonight that will go through this in pictures and screenshots, but we'll do this real quick with the editing. So I click picture, I click browse. I don't select anything because I don't want to change it. I like this picture. I think I look really pretty. I mean, I don't know about you, but it's a good picture. And so we save settings. Now, for this, all these pieces, I can choose, and this is what the arrows are, to move things around based off of what I want people to see first. So if I want people to see my endorsements first, I can move them up. I happen to like people reading my summary because it gives people context into the fact that I can write. But I mean, you can set it up however you want. For editing your experience, you can either add a position, you can edit your title, you can edit where you do this job, you can edit all these things. You can also, and I have actually yet to do this, so you caught me a little bit with my pants down, to add videos, images, and documents. And we're actually going to show that off right now with Steve's profile. I'm going to do this relatively. You're still going to be here. Where are you?
That's how busy you were today, that I've already fallen off your newsfeed. Oh, it's Weber, W-E-B-E-R.
W-E-B, Weber.
Yeah, that's me.
I'm sorry. Well,
that's all right.
That's another thing. LinkedIn will sometimes glitch and say your second connections with someone when you're actually first connections. So it's LinkedIn's fault, not yours. So we have actually videos and social media. So Steve is a social media guy. What he does is live and breathe making people share viral content, keep track of why people are sharing it and who's sharing it, as well as just being at the forefront of what's going on. Because when you do social media, when you say you do social media, that usually means you have insomnia and are a workaholic and are a Renaissance man or woman of talent, that you're able to balance just so many different things. So be very careful when you say you're good at social media. I'd actually rather advise you to say, I know how to use social media for me, or I know how to brand myself. Because knowing how to brand yourself is very different than knowing how to truly use social media for a company. But yeah, you can add videos. We can actually, I'm not going to go through the process of logging in and creating a new profile here. If you truly are interested in that, I know we're going to kind of go through that process with screenshots. But again, we can maybe set up a follow-up of like the nitty-gritty of actually setting up a profile. And maybe we can have more questions added ahead of that webinar so that we can make sure that it's the most productive use of time. Unless there are any other questions that are really like everyone's going to benefit from, I think we should save the rest for the blog post.
Yeah, I think we covered it all. We actually just got a thank you from Marta, so you're very welcome. Thank you, Nava.
No problem. And so if you all want to link, we're going to share this PowerPoint with you so that you all can have this for your notes. But connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm a very friendly person, and I do good for people who do good. So I'm happy to help you navigate however I can. Check out Angel Ed. We do workshops all the time on getting into college, navigating college life, fiscal literacy, and really just be very cognizant of who you are, what you want, and why you want it. Because once you can answer those three things, branding yourself on LinkedIn actually isn't very hard. It's just a matter of getting the data down. So your takeaway from this should be how knowing the answer, being able to answer those three questions, and then just getting it down on paper, and then getting it up online. Are we good?
Yeah, I would say so. One last question here. Mary's just asking if the information will be printable. Mary, yes, we're going to get this deck to you, and I'm also recording the webinar, and we'll upload that tomorrow. So just check the community. We'll have that out for tomorrow.
And definitely all of you, your homework for this webinar is joining the Penn Foster group, because I promise you we're going to be uploading a lot of things and sharing a lot of things on that group. I'd also invite you to join the Angel Ed group. There are a lot of mentors there as well. But if you want the kind of to take advantage of the Penn Foster resources, interact with the Penn Foster mediums. And you're doing a really good first step just by listening on this webinar. But I think we're going to wrap it up. But yes, send questions in to Steve, and we will get the blog post. I'm actually going to say it will be up.
Now, I think your mic just cut out a little bit, but everything's going to be up on community.pennfoster.edu tomorrow, which is Penn Foster's community. There was a question where we were putting it.
Right, and then the screen grabs for LinkedIn profile creation, as well as if you want to send questions to be answered, make sure they're in by tomorrow morning 9 a.m. and there will be a blog post up by Friday evening addressing them.
Hey, sounds good. Thank you so much for presenting today.
Oh, no problem. I hope you guys all found this useful.
All right, great, Nava. We're just going to stop the webinar. Thank you, everybody who asked such great questions. If you have any more, you could ask them over on the community, and we'll definitely answer them for you.
Have a great week, guys.
See ya.
Conquer.